Hello and welcome to the Shower Shed. Thank you to Sai Donbavand for suggesting the subject matter of this here YouTube video. This is going to be about pitching. Pitching is like courtship, and that sounds a bit weird for a business thing. But it is like courtship, so hear me out. You start off with a love triangle. You and your funding partner are trying to gain the affection of the customer. You need each other to create a product that the customer wants. This is a love triangle. In the past, there's been a bit of a mismatch. The developer's done the work to impress, like a peacock. The potential investor has assumed that you already know what they offer: money. You should always want a little bit more than money, in fact a lot more than money, and you should be keen to get them to sell what else they bring to the table, because of course publishers can do a lot more than offer you money. And just to avoid any confusion, this is about getting funding for your video game, whether you're speaking to an investor or a publisher or a platform partner. Now you've got to remember, pitching can work both ways. It should work both ways. Not only are you trying to get something out of this, but your prospective partner wants something out of this too, and you can help them. Just to show you how this works going the other way, I'll tell you a little bit about my meeting with Jeff Minter at PlayStation. This is a few years ago, of course, and I was kind of sad to see that Jeff wasn't doing as well out of iOS with his frankly fantastic games as I thought he should be doing. And I tried to reach out to him, but for some reason he hadn't got my email. And the lovely Gaz Liddon, the gent who runs Ruffian, one of the best developers around incidentally, he put us in touch and he came to the meeting. And for 25 minutes I pitched Jeff. I basically pitched PlayStation to Jeff. I knew his pain points, and really I wanted to make a point that I wanted him to feel very comfortable with us. So I was effectively pitching PlayStation and the way that we'd be working together. You know, some of his past relationships and what happened with those relationships is reasonably well documented. And it made me sad because, you know, the guy's an absolute legend. So it came to discussion about the game, because of course up until this point I'd just been pitching PlayStation. And I said, okay, what do you want to make? And he said, oh, I want to make something like this. He was talking about TXK. And I said, okay, how much do you need? And he said, I need X. And I said, okay, let's do it. And that was it. So that's an example of where I wanted to show a prospective partner that PlayStation at the time, this is a few years ago, was more than just a funding partner. And as a developer, if you're seeking funding, then it's kind of important to show that you're not just bringing a game or a concept or a prototype to the table, that there's more to it than that. You know, where's the value, if you don't mind me using a businessy term? And of course, TXK turned out to be an absolutely fantastic game on the Vita. And when I left PlayStation, there was a little leaving do for me, and Jeff came to that. and he got me a lovely present, which is in the shower shed. Let me see if I can swing the camera around and show you. See that little sheep up there? That's from Jeff. And that keeps me company while I work. So, firm friends with Jeff, and there is an example there of where the funding partner is more than just a funding partner. Now let's talk about reputation. The likelihood of a courtship resulting in a successful marriage is greatly increased if both you and your partner are aware of each other's reputation. This requires preparation. Let me give you some examples of preparation. Shaving. Not bad. Okay, enough of my face. Many people have been sold the idea that shaving with 5 blades is better than one. Maybe not. Actually, shaving can be absolutely astounding with a single blade, but the trick is really good preparation. You prepare your skin really well, and the blade, the single blade, will cut through like butter. And you know what? It costs something like 1/1,000,000th of the cost of these 5-bladed expensive monstrosities that seem to last less and less long every time they come out with a new generation. So another good example, of course, is having a freshly cooked meal compared to, say, a microwave meal. The preparation will result in a much better product. Same with a single blade shave. Really good preparation of your skin, your hair. It will give you just a much better shave. Not just that, it's a better experience as well. So you have to ask yourself if you've prepared well with your reputation. You have to prepare your reputation. It takes time to build a reputation. I talk about Mike Bithell a lot because he ticks a lot of boxes for me. People assume that he got to his level of success with very little work, but nothing could be further from the truth. He'd been working for a long, long time. He plied his trade before he went solo, and he was good at it. And you might see the Twitter persona of Mike, but behind that there is an extraordinary amount of work and thinking going on. There are lots of people I could cite like Mike, but Mike's one of the best examples. So working on your reputation, really important. What is your reputation? I mean, what games have you worked on? You need to bring that out somehow. What numbers can you reveal? Not your vanity metrics, but real numbers, meaningful numbers. Who's on your team? What's their reputation? What's your profile like on Google? What do you like on the other social media networks? And how are you engaged in the community generally? Because really the best thing you can do is to have other people in the industry who are respected say good things about you. So have you talked to them? Have you met them? Are you friends with them? Do they respect your work? Because the best thing that you can possibly have said about you is her reputation preceded her, or his reputation preceded him. That's the position you want to be in. Quick example of this was when we got to sign No Man's Sky at PlayStation. Why did we get the lead on that? Because Sean and the team had worked with us before. And so when they needed somebody to trust, they reached out to somebody they'd established that relationship of trust with to try and move things forward. Warren Buffett says something along the lines of, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and only 5 minutes to destroy it. So no amount of work that you put in to building your reputation can be considered wasted. So work hard on that. When you're choosing a prospective partner, why did you choose that partner? What are their strengths? When you meet with them, you need to sell them their qualities. Find out what they're looking for. Who do you know there? Those relationships are extremely important. Have you built rapport? If you go back to the situation with Sean and Hello Games and PlayStation, there were some really great relationships there, and they were really important in making that happen, making sure that everything worked out. You know, the timing will always be right if you're patient, polite, persistent, and likable. You can manage that, right? Your biggest problem is your own obscurity. This problem's only getting worse with the increasing competition. So what's your plan to fix that? How can you get away from competition and more towards creativity? Look at Mike Bithell again. Sorry. He's got a good reputation, but he didn't rely on that with his recent successful release of Subsurface Circular, a game he proudly describes as a short, and which was released when it was announced on Twitter in Mike style. But it was an audacious move. However, it was really carefully planned and it was brilliantly executed. So you might just have seen a carefree tweet go out there, or a carefree series of tweets, but underneath there was an astonishing amount of activity, planning and coordination to make all of that happen. Think about the work he'd already put in with Steam, with journalists and so on, and the reputation he'd established with all of those people beforehand to make all of that happen. Remember also that the best prospects are busy. They're hard to get hold of, but they're worth your patience. Never take rejection personally. It's unprofessional and it's going to hurt your reputation, but worse, it's a self-defeating mindset. The other thing is it makes you demoralized as well. You know, if you just take these things personally, you feel awful about yourself. Don't do that. You know, it's not you. Well, it might be you, but it's usually not you. It's usually the situation. I like reading a lot of Jack Canfield and watching some of his videos, loads of stuff like that, as you can imagine. But he says, when someone says no, you just say next. You know, most of us are unlikely to be the next Beatles or the next J.K. Rowling, but remember, they got rejected time and time again before getting to a yes. Pitching, like sales, can be a bit of a numbers game, but it's your job to load the dice as best you can. So we've talked about love triangle, we've talked about reputation. Now let's talk about dancing, a subject I know absolutely nothing about. I've got probably 3 left feet. You know, people like to do business with people that they like. That's really important to consider. It's really important to put the work in to be likable. I know it sounds like, yeah, but my game's really good, it should just be about the game. Life's not like that. It really isn't. You know, if you're horrible to people, whether they try and be fair or not, there's going to be something underneath that stops them wanting to work with you. You've got to entice your prospect. You've got a meeting, right? Let's say you've got a meeting. Let's call that the dance. Great, but you've only got their time. Now, you've got to get their attention. How are you going to break their preoccupation and show them that you're the one to solve their problem? Remember, always focus on their problem. They don't care about your problem. They care about their own problems. And you have to demonstrate in the best way you can that you can fix their problems, not in a tacky, salesy, pushy way, but really listen to them, understand. You know, hopefully you've got to know the business by now, what their priorities are, what their strategy is likely to be over the coming years, you know, who the key players are within that strategy. Do your homework, and then, having identified their problem, show that you've got a way of fixing it and that your solution is the best solution. Solution, yeah, we're talking about video game, right? So, you know, you hear a word like solution, you might think, oh, that's just business nonsense. It's not. Even a game is a solution to a problem. You're both after the same thing. You're both after a customer. You know, from a purely artistic perspective, if you just think about the publisher as a means of distributing your game, for getting the money, they can reach the customers you want to reach. They're very skilled at that. So you have to respect at least that part of it. So can you show that you're able to fix their problem? Can you teach the prospect, yes, the prospect, something about their own problem? They love that. You know, if you can show them that you completely understand where they're coming from, maybe you're like a step ahead even, and you've put something in that they simply didn't expect. Delight them. That's the other thing. Delight them constantly. Show them that you're the person to solve the problems. And, you know, if it doesn't work out, don't worry. There'll be another meeting. There'll be another time. Keep the relationship going. One day, you might get to work together. It's happened to me loads of times where somebody said no initially to working with us at PlayStation, and then they said yes. I've had it myself in the dim and distant past, and in the recent past too. You just keep going. You stay nice, you stay patient, you stay persistent, but you keep trying and you'll get there. So your goal in this meeting, the dance, is to break their preoccupation, establish rapport, never break the spell. You know, once you started to build that relationship and the rapport and so on, don't be tacky. Just be you. Just be a human being. Don't try and overdo all of the techniques, you know, that people talk about in pitching. That's not really important. What's important is that you show that you're sensitive, that you understand what they're saying, that you're listening to them, that you have a really good grasp of the scope of their problem. Just be likable. And you'll find that if you're persistent and likable, one day, it's a small industry, the likelihood is you'll be working together and they'll remember you fondly. The other thing is, if you've been talking to them, maybe even being helpful to them, I don't mean, you know, tacky stuff again. I just mean dropping them the odd line saying, oh, I was thinking about you because I saw this link or whatever. You know, something really simple like that. Don't go nuts, don't stalk them, you know, just the odd email here and there. They're going to remember you fondly. Take them for coffee near where they work, or, you know, lunch near where they work from time to time if you can afford it. If not, just, you know, drop them a line with something nice. And one day they're going to be faced with a problem and they're going to think about who they could speak to who might be able to solve that problem. And, you know, that worked really well for me at PlayStation. I called on a lot of people who I thought, you know what? These people are around, they're savvy, they're smart, they're switched on, they understand the problems, they've been persistent but likable. Let's give them a shot. And that worked out really well. Some of the mistakes you want to avoid in a pitch: rigidity. You know, don't be too rigid. There'll be a time for that. There'll be a time for deciding where your lines are, but it isn't that pitch meeting. Learn some improvisation. I read this great book on improv, which helps greatly in this kind of situation. Like in improv, there's a technique where two actors, it is comedy by the way, not that I'm very good at comedy, but two actors go back and forth, and the key thing is never to say no or reject what the other person is saying. You just continue building on the story and it becomes more and more outrageous, and that's a good thing to learn. So this is kind of, again, like a dance, you know, you are complimenting what they're doing, and you're doing this even if it's nothing like the situation you want to get into. You're doing this just to elicit more information, to try and get a clearer understanding of what the problem is, because sometimes you're going to think, this is not right, this is not good for me, and that's fine. That's more information, right? But maybe in the future opportunity might be right, and you'll have established a great relationship and a reputation for being decent and respectful. The other mistake: detail. Don't get bogged down in the detail in the first meeting. Don't get defensive. And the worst mistake of all, never bullshit. Never ever bullshit. Good professionals will spot it, and bad ones, or let's just say people who aren't that competent, might remember it, might have made a note of it, and therefore call you out on it at some point. Open with a hook. What's your one-line hook? You need one line that encapsulates your game, your project, and it needs to be really provocative. I don't mean provocative in a rude way. I mean provocative in the sense that it kind of opens up their thinking a little bit. Talk openly about the competition, you know. You've got to explain why your game is unique. You know, if you have no competition, you're a risk. So don't act like you're totally unique when the likelihood of that is really low, unless of course you really are unique, in which case knock yourself out. But you know, if they start saying, oh, this is like so-and-so, this is like so-and-so, don't say, no, it's not, this is completely unique. No, that'll just mark you out as an arsehole, and it'll make them defensive, and they'll clam up and they'll like think, oh, right, okay, got to get out of this meeting. Some of them will tolerate some of that, that's fine, you know. There are ways of teasing and being provocative without being an arsehole. It can be done. Somebody did that brilliantly with me back in the distant past, was James Marsden, who doctored an image from our portal and replaced my image from the account management page with an image of Ronald McDonald. That was cool. It was right on the edge, but it was cool. It was when we were a bit stuffy in corporate, and after that things kind of changed. But you can get away with that sometimes, just be careful. Now we come to the subject of marriage. Yes, marriage. Marriage, what is it? Marriage is a publicly witnessed contract, that's all. I'll give you a few tips on this. I mean, this is an entire subject. I'm not going to teach you how to negotiate contracts. I'm not going to talk about negotiation. But I'm going to talk about a few principles that I think you need to remember. In as many cases as you reasonably can, you want to own your IP. Some people will try to take it. There are enough people out there who don't, that, you know, it's cool for you to say you're going to retain your IP, you don't want anyone else to have it. Recoup fast, you know, don't have some really slow, awful recoup rate. Have a get out clause if your partner goes bust or gets into some kind of trouble. Avoid clauses where your partner can terminate for convenience, and if they do, make sure you get buffered enough to survive the shock. Have a marketing plan. This is really important. You're thinking, well, the publisher needs to do the marketing. Well, yes, they will do the marketing, but what if it's not very good? What if you're not one of the best games around? You're going to need to reach an audience. Maybe you just don't fit in with the strategy. It's not personal, but you've got to accept that that might be a possibility. I mean, in the book world, you almost can't get a deal these days unless you bring your engaged audience with you. You know, you've got to say to them, I've got 2 trillion followers on Instagram and they all give me 5 billion engagements a day or whatever it is these days. But, you know, this is really important. The greater your reputation, the more you have to lose. So, lawyer up. So, you're married, and now you have birth and childhood of your product, of course, your game. Sorry, I said product. It's product, whether you like it or not. It's a product of your imagination. Yeah, we'll stick with that. You know, your child is in gestation to start off with. What do you and your partner plan to do together to ensure that your child is well received in the marketplace? How much awareness have you driven? You know, everybody thinks that their child is special, and everybody's child is special to its family. But this child has to go out in the world with lots of children, all of whom are special. And so when everyone is special, no one is special. Being special might just be enough for survival. But for success, your child needs to be extraordinary. What are you going to do to make your child extraordinary. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing when you pitch. Do you have something absolutely freaking awesome? Because if you do, you're going to be okay. All the best. If you've got any questions about this video, drop me a line on Twitter at @TheSharshed, and I'll be happy to lawyer up. No, just kidding. All the best. See you soon in the Sharshed.